Hi guys, I'm Simon Dunkley,
And I'm Sam Glean.
and we are sharing our experience of being black in the UK as part of the Young and Black UK Youth Initiative. So Sam,
Yes.
give me a little bit about your career and your progression through CCP.
Okay. So I guess the start for me was my degree in business management and accounting. Following that, I got a role with another company for about a year. Then I started at Coca-Cola. I started in field sales, working for a brand, Glasshouse Vitamin Water at the time. Progressed through some field sales roles, did that for 4 years. Then I moved on to internal audit. Through that, I was able to progress to manager, and then I moved on again after 5 years of audit into business transformation office now, where I'm a senior manager here. Things are going well. I think we met 10 years ago when I was in Vitamin Water. So tell us what was your start?
Yeah, that's a funny story. Actually living in the same area but never really connecting. So a bit about me. I've got a degree in computing. Recession kind of brought me to Coca-Cola. Did various jobs before that.
Previous to 2009.
Previous to 2009. So did a bit of working with children with disabilities. I was a senior trainer in BT before coming into CCEP, or what was CCE at the time. Started as a part-time regional merchandiser, which obviously works in grocery, stacking shelves and creating or fixing book stock errors in terms of grocery. Spent about 9 months in that role and then moved into Glasshouse where I met you. Had some really good times in Glasshouse.
Of course, come on, I was there.
really sort of bounced off each other in that role. Then progressed into a sales role, an independent sales role. Moved into grocery, did a few roles in terms of the office and category planning, and a grocery development role. And now actually an AE in wholesale, in a wholesale channel, which I really love, and I'm really finding really beneficial to my career at CCP. So I've been at CCP for 10 years now.
Nice. Tell me then, what was your first interaction with racism?
So my first interaction with racism was probably seeing it on TV. I would have probably said maybe just turning into teens and seeing the story about Stephen Lawrence, which was a big impact. I think that was something that sort of brought the family around, and we was all sort of tuned in as a culture to see the injustice of something that happened to someone that looked exactly like me. And then being at that age, it was almost a very sort of real situation for me in terms of how black people could be treated. I think I've got I've got older siblings, much older siblings. I'm the youngest of my siblings, and kind of hearing the stories that they had been through earlier on in their lives. In terms of racism, I hadn't really interacted with that, or that hadn't come across that. So to really see the Stephen Lawrence situation play out, and murder of a young black man, as I said, like myself, was really sort of telling of what black people really do go through in this country that, to be honest, we're born in. Me and you was born here, so we identify with being British. And I think for me that was a massive impact on how I looked at racism and how I was sort of in tune to what racism is. So for me that was a big thing for me. So, I mean, what about yourself? What really sort of...
I guess for me, it probably felt more local. It was more, I guess speaking with, in hindsight, it was more, being young, growing up in Southeast London, seeing sort of older black people, black men that, didn't necessarily get the breaks, or, they weren't necessarily, afforded the opportunities that, now I understand were opportunities that I received, understanding when I'd seen people, be stopped and searched, and, hearing the stories as a youngster, not sure, what kind of happened. I think that for me kind of showed me that there were some issues with, I guess, how we were seen or how we were potentially treated, again, just for being sometimes, But don't get me wrong, sometimes there are issues, there are things that are done that are wrong, but I think it was more so understanding it was widespread. A lot of people that I knew, a lot of, just people I didn't know, I just saw, it always just happened to be, a black guy this or black guy that, police, whether it's someone being attacked. It was always that sort of feel in my area growing up that something could happen to black people. So I think that for me was my first, I'm supposed to be a bit, afraid on my own, or I should be wary of this.
Yeah. And in terms of that, I mean, how has that impacted you as a young black male?
I think definitely I'd say at this stage, I can sort of look back and I can kind of feel that, as a youngster, I potentially felt a bit of resentment towards people that I felt had, more opportunities than I did, or, people that didn't see me for anything other than just being black. It potentially even, people that were black, that I wondered, how come you're not doing more, or how come you're not in the suit in central London, like, I saw the other people go to work in. That potentially would have caused some sort of resentment in me, that now at my older age, I can say, the opportunities weren't there for, people to be able to have the freedoms and the opportunities that I have now. So I can respect that, something, people worked hard as I was growing up. Only people had 2 or 3 jobs, they were looking after their families and so on. So I think now at this age, it's taught me that, I have to look out for, people that potentially don't know where to get the opportunities, that could be leaning towards a life, especially when you're young. It's very easy to say, there's no opportunities here where I'm afraid and the people don't look like me. Let me see what's around where the people look like me. And it could potentially, not be the greatest opportunities or the greatest starts, in life. So I think that for me was more so the impact. I think at this age, at a younger age, obviously I kind of turned away to some things. I was lucky that I stayed and I went through this sort of college, university route. I was lucky that my mum was kind of on my back to make sure I stayed into that, which is very important to her. But yeah, I think that at this age, it's feeling that, I shouldn't feel that, people weren't trying hard enough around me, they weren't reaching for the opportunities, or they weren't good enough for the opportunities. Was that the system potentially, from what I've seen and what I've potentially been through, wasn't set up in those times when I was younger to allow for somebody to be in a position where, I'm one of a few, if not the only, black senior manager in Coke. So it's like, it's that real in terms of we've just got to this, So yeah, that's the impact I think it's had on me. What do you say in terms of yourself?
I think in terms of impact, I think I was listening to what you were saying, and I think what you said, it really resonated with me. So in terms of, as I said, I had older siblings. So for me, they were the role models. They were academically really doing well. So I have a sister that's a nurse, have a brother who's quite high up in social work, have another sister who is a manager and manages a few nurseries. So I have a brother who's in graphic designing, and he does designing work as well. So for me, I always had people that was next to me that looked like me, that were aspiring and doing big things, and showed that there was a way out. So for me, when I looked around at my area wasn't sort of what I looked to as a projection of what is out there for me. So I always looked at my older brothers and sisters, and that was for me something that was really different and kind of kept me away from everything else that was out there. I had a very protective mother anyway, but I think for me it was almost like I can't be the one that doesn't move forward in life, or becomes the person that really doesn't really do anything. So it was almost written for me that I had to obviously try to actually follow in the footsteps of my older brothers and sisters. And I think in terms of black people, I find that those experiences and having that sort of close net in terms of a family around you is really important. I think when you don't have that, you almost look to the wrong people, which can take you down the wrong lines, which can then obviously end up with you doing a lot of things that you shouldn't be doing. So I think for me that was a massive impact for me, and I really loved the fact that I had a close family and that I was able to actually have much older brothers and sisters, which really helped me in my life as well. So
yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that with this being sort of the Young and Black initiative. I think it's the way that a lot of young black kids are growing up now is that they don't necessarily have the support structure in place where they have the brothers or sisters or the mom that can drive them forward, and potentially sometimes they find themselves falling into whether it's the wrong crowd or if it's crowds that are just not productive, not in the sense that they're doing bad things, but they're potentially not progressive in what they're doing. That can always be a trap that, again, many friends I grew up with when I was younger were easily susceptible to, being that they didn't have that network. So again, I think as we've grown up, at this age, it's very important that we think about those kids in terms of what amenities and what do they have, and in their areas to be able to, you know, facilitate the growth that they need to, you know, the opportunities that they need to see, you know, potentially other people that have come from where they've come from, to be able to, you know, come out of it and be in a position where they can say, look, it's possible, you have to stick to it, you're going to have to, you know, find people that can support you through it and keep your motivation going, but it's definitely, you know, possible to come out of a situation where you don't feel like the most opportunities are around you to be in a position where you know, there's more opportunities for you in the future.
Yeah, and I think in terms of that, being an individual is really important.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so easy to follow the trends and follow what your friends are doing, and it's really hard to really step away and kind of find a path that you want to go down. I think in terms of, as I said, looking at someone that has almost made something positive out of their life from something that maybe wasn't positive in terms of how they grew up in the area they grew up in, is not always easy to find, and it's almost how do we now become allies to those young people to kind of help them on that path and show them that, listen, you can actually step away from the nonsense and really sort of find your own path and work at something that you really want to do, and it is possible to really make a decent life and really progress through life in a positive way where you can almost impact others, because I think it's so important that there's probably not a lot of those in the neighbourhoods that we grew up in. I mean, we grew up in the same area.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I didn't really look up to too many people in my area in terms of growth and in terms of career progression, and nobody probably would have helped me in that direction if I wasn't as positive and as strong as I was.
It's exactly as you said. I guess mentors were very few and far between. It was more the siblings, you know, that you had that were kind of driving the aspirations more than anything. But yeah, I was having a conversation. I don't think I had many male role models outside my father and maybe one or two others, you know, one was a preacher, for instance. So, you know, it was very few and far between in terms of just seeing someone that I could aspire to be like. So definitely important that we're able to, you know, give back. And if we are even just doing something like this, just to talk to youth and say, hey, you know, we're the same in what we've come through. So you know, it gives them that vision to see that it's potentially there as well.
Yeah.